my friends. This is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up. This is my podcast where authors of all sorts of different backgrounds come on in, and we just sit and talk for about a half hour, 40 minutes or so, and then we make up a story together. So it is always a good time. And I always plug something here because I'm juggling a lot of things, and I'm trying to see what works and what doesn't work, and things that I love, and trying to get them out there to people. But based on the conversation I had with my guest today, we were talking quite a bit about getting yourself out there, like saying yes to things and using your voice and your personality and your energy, your authentic energy, to further your career, to make yourself known, to make yourself familiar to booksellers or to libraries. And it is critically important. And I know a lot of writers kind of eschew that idea, or they just don't want to deal with it because maybe they're introverts. They feel like, I'm not comfortable speaking in front of people. I don't want to do readings. I will say, as part of my coaching services, one of the things that I do is I do public speaking training, and I have a whole nother company that I never talk about on this podcast that does communication coaching. So I work with groups of people, usually in corporations, about how to physically stand in front of people, how to communicate with people, what to do with your hands, how to use your voice, all of these things. And I do this with writers as well. I've worked with writers who are going to be pitching live in front of agents, and they want communication coaching on that. So if you're increasingly asked to do events and it scares the hell out of you, reach out to me. Go to unboundwriter.com. There's a form there where we can have a complimentary call and just to figure out what you're looking for. But I do a lot of communication coaching, and I love it. And I love public speaking. I love being in front of people. I've given presentations, in front of groups ranging from 3 people to over 2,000. And I didn't used to be like that. I used to be scared as hell. And doing it over and over and over again, and finding out, how do I lean into my own authentic personality and not try to be what I think people want me to be, that makes a big difference. So it's been a learning process, just like writing has. And it is something that I coach. All right. On to our guest of the day. So today I talked to author Scott Graham. So Scott's a really cool guy. Scott is the author of the National Parks series, of which there are 9 books out. And his most recent one is Death Valley Duel, that came out last year, but they're re-releasing book 1 for the 10th anniversary edition, and it is called Grand Canyon Sacrifice, and it's got a foreword by Ann Hillerman in there, which is amazing. And Scott's a Colorado guy, just like me. So I don't know if we've ever connected so much in person, but I have definitely been aware of Scott, and obviously we know a lot of the same Colorado writers. But our conversation went really deep into kind of the career of writing and how you view the career, viewing writing as a startup company and not a hobby, things like that, and what books that he read early on that really inspired him, and kind of the through line of underneath everything that you do as a writer, there has to be the joy, there has to be the passion. I think we made the analogy, if you went to a corporate job that you hated and they said, great, be here every day, and in 10 years we'll start paying you, you would never do that. So why do writers do it? And a lot of writers give up because they don't have that inherent passion for it. But if you do have that inherent passion for it, and you do treat it as a startup with the right analytical tools and the right attitude and a willingness to receive and absorb critical feedback, then, it still might be a while before you start making money doing it, but your passion's going to remain. So it was a very inspirational conversation. It was interesting. He asked me at one point if I learn and if my writing gets better from some of the manuscript coaching that I do, and I answered that question. But as I'm recording this intro right now, and as I'm thinking about my conversation with Scott, it's occurring to me that talking to these writers on this podcast, that's also how I learn. I get inspired by them, listening to Scott's enthusiasm and his love, not only for what he's writing, but for his publisher. It's infectious. So, I hope that you're feeling this as well as you're listening to these episodes. But I always feel most of the times after I record these episodes, I'm like, God, that was really interesting what they said. I wonder if I should try something that way. So it's always a learning experience for me as well. So this is a fantastic episode full of good advice. This is my conversation with Scott Graham. I know we're both Colorado authors, and the other thing is we have in common is we just lost the Colorado Book Award.
Did. Yeah. But I think it's a new experience for you.
It is, yeah. They've been very fortunate to me in the past, but it's
that was my second loss. So without winning yet. But the good thing is I lost to Barbara. Have you had Barbara Nicholas on your show yet?
Yeah, not only I've had her twice on the show, and I actually kind of semi-toured with her because we have the same PR team, we have different publishers, but we have the same outside PR team. And so we both had books that came out at the beginning of this year. So we did probably 4 or 5 different events together in different cities around the country.
Yeah. So, and so I understand why I lose to Barbara Nicholas,
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And I lost to Cynthia Swanson, who's a terrific author as well. And it's funny, I was planning to go. We were going to go down to Denver, and we were going to spend the night down there. And I woke up that morning and I was so sick and just feverish, and I rarely get sick. So I canceled on everything, and hey, worked out for the best.
It did. Yeah, I figured because I didn't see you there. I drove all the way up, man. I'm like, hey, I got my chance. I'm going to sit there and be disappointed.
Yeah. So you're in Durango. So that's maybe quickly explain to the listeners where Durango, Colorado is.
Okay. Now, and you're national. So we're not really talking like, I've been on Mark Stevens a couple of times, and it's much more Rocky Mountain specific. But, my sense is you're just you're after a national audience. Am I right? Or,
Yeah. I mean, I have authors from all over the world on. So, but you're down kind of of south Colorado.
Yeah, exactly.
So what brought you down there, by the way?
My parents, when I was a kid. I've been here since 1971.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you are true to your series, which I understand is having its 10th anniversary, the National Park Series.
That's right.
Yeah. That was your playground in a way, a little bit, just kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you fell in love with it from an early age, and you were just in 1971. You were just left to explore, be home by dinner, don't get eaten by a mountain lion, kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah, precisely. Yeah, and honestly, got to raise 2 sons here doing the same damn thing.
Yeah.
Letting them just kind of run around and do their thing, and they're now off. Like your daughter, actually, I noted they've just finished law school and are off in the big cities doing their big city lawyer thing.
Oh,
but gave them their roots here in Durango, which is just a fun thing to have been able to do.
So,
Which Erie, I would imagine, was your daughter raised the whole time in Erie?
Yeah, Erie and Lafayette. Yeah, so just right up here.
In a lot of ways similar to Durango in terms of that freedom, not the mass, not this suburbia Aurora sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, not a sprawling suburban complex. Where did your interest in writing come from? Was that a childhood thing?
Oh yeah, my mom is a retired English professor from Fort Lewis College here in Durango, so
Okay.
not much choice.
But she should have been the knowledgeable one to say this would be a terrible career choice.
Totally. Yes, which it was. But see that I married a doctor, so I'm good.
You're like, will you marry me so I can just do whatever I want and make no money?
Well, John Gardner's book, not on writing, which is King's, but on becoming a novelist, which precedes even on writing with Stephen King. One of the things he says, and I read it when I was in college in the 1970s at CSU in Fort Collins, was if you want to be a writer, if you really want to do it, marry somebody that wants to make money. He says that in his freaking
smart
novelist book.
That's smart because, I've talked to a lot of authors who have gone through like the whole MFA thing, and which, pretty positive reviews overall, but they don't tell you the practicalities of writing, especially from the angle of being a novelist. I mean, obviously you become an English major and there's, you have a lot of venues, especially, decades ago, more so, when we think about journalism and actual promising careers kind of a thing.
Right.
And these days it's just like, well, fucking good luck, man. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And yet, what to an extent, it was always been that way. You think about the minstrels back, wandering around with their life, they're just kind of doing what they do, or the portrait artists back in the day when they would have to go work for the king in order to do the paintings they really wanted to do. I'm not sure, I think it's always been that way. The creative world has always never paid us all that much money.
Yeah, and it's kind of a matter of just, obviously the art of storytelling, whatever form it takes, is in continuous evolution, and it's how do I match that? How do I make it work? How do I understand not only what it is now, but what it might potentially become? Because we're always in these dynamic shifts right now. Obviously, this influx of AI is profoundly changing how people write and can write, and is flooding the market with voices in quotes,
Right.
that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And so you think about it being harder than ever, but to your point, I think it was never easy.
Right, precisely. And it's going to be fun to see this whole AI thing play out. I just wonder if it's not going to end up making people really go to what is real and what they know is real.
I think it is. I think that's a great point. And I've said this a few times on this podcast, but I think so. I've got it's over. It's going to be a year and 2 months until my next book is out, just because of how the scheduling of the publisher works. I'm like, how do I stay relevant in between that time? And I think you have to really make a concerted effort to do that through things that are, real, like video, like appearances, using
Absolutely.
your own authentic voice and your presence and your energy, however you can, to let people know who you are. Because, right, people are going to be perhaps yearning for a name rather than a title. So how do you get your name out there? How do you do it?
Right. Exactly what you're talking about. And I would encourage anybody watching you and I talk to basically follow your path, to understand what it is that you're doing, because I have done that.
Yeah.
I've been watching you over these last 10 years, the same 10 years that I've been working,
Huh.
my side of the street. And it's just brilliant what you're doing. And it doesn't come naturally to, and again, this is something I know you've talked about with many of your writers, but it's doesn't really come naturally to all of us because we're sitting there in front of our computer all this time. And then all of a sudden we've got to go out and get on stage, as it were.
Yeah.
You've been brilliant about that, putting yourself out there. And I've tried to learn from you. And so that's what
Oh,
I do. I get out there, I do my events, I talk to people, and I'm convinced it's going to be more and more the same thing. I think that I'm going to go back to the music industry. You think about the little stretch of time in the 70s and 80s when Aerosmith and ZZ Top or whoever were making all this money off their albums, and they didn't really have to do anything. And then the music industry figured out how to take all that money away, the same way us authors might argue that they take, the publishers take 90%, we only get 10% or whatever. In the writing world, at least they can go out and draw a big audience.
yeah.
I'm sorry, in the music world, they can go out and draw a big audience, do these big stadium shows, make some money. In our case, maybe we're not going to make money, but we've got to be out there giving the real piece of us to people in the same way, in my opinion. And
Yeah, that's a great point, and thank you for the kind words. And I could picture listeners who are writers, who are maybe aspiring writers, saying, "Well, how do I do that?" Nobody's asking me to come out and talk about my, small debut or whatever.
right,
And it is hard. I mean, what I've learned is, first of all, you made a good point about just being out in front of people. And I think if it's not natural to you, I think that's kind of okay.
Right. That was
Because as
true.
long as you're authentic to yourself and know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and like we always do, strive to get better. But I've also learned to say yes to as much as I can.
Right.
Don't decline opportunities even if they scare you, because that is how you might fall in your face a few times,
Right.
and
And
that's
you will
totally okay.
continue to fall in our faces. Yeah, precisely.
Right.
Yes. Start small. I mean, that's what I would say to people. The classic example to me is William Kent Kruger. If people have followed his career
Yeah.
path,
Well, he's
and
massive now. Yeah.
massive now,
Yeah.
but it was a long road. And he went around and he would just go to libraries will take anybody all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. I go to libraries all the time and there's 4 or 5 people. Maybe there's a good chunk of people, but many times a small little group, and you learn how to interact as a result.
Yeah.
And they will take you if you're published, even if you're self-published. In many cases, they're looking for action, at their library. Libraries are great, and you're just supporting literacy in general. And then smaller bookstores. And that's what William Kent Kruger did. He started with all those small bookstores just in the Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa area. And to this day, he always talks about when he does his big tours, he starts by going all those regional bookstores to begin with to thank them for what they did for him to put him on that big stage. And then you learn how to interact from
Yeah.
doing smaller venues without suddenly becoming big and not having done this and then you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's totally true. And, somebody might say, well, and then the other scary thing is you go to a bookstore or a library and it's just you and you're like,
Yeah,
what am I going to talk about? And I
right.
think there are, now that we're kind of going down this road, because it's not something we talk about a lot on this show, and I think it's important. There are kind of, in my opinion, some best practices in being in front of an audience. So for example, on this show, we don't really talk about your books.
Mhm.
If we go 10 minutes into detail on your latest book, it's interesting, but I think what really is interesting is hearing about you.
Right.
What's your
Yeah, you're right.
journey been like? And so when you talk in to a group of people, talk about all the failure. It's fascinating, I think.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that what you tend to do?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. I talk about I've got as long a journey as anyone. I mean, you can see the color of my hair.
Yeah.
I've been out there for a long time playing this game, and I have wanted to write fiction pretty much from day one.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was reading John Gardner's How to Be a Novelist or Becoming a Novelist when I was in college, right out of high school. And I got one of the earliest versions of desktop computers you could get back when they didn't really exist. And cobbled it
Right.
together.
They were $3,000 for like
Exactly,
almost
exactly.
zero RAM
That's right, precisely. Yeah, I use like
floppy
the
disks.
Atari 64 Game Boy thing to keyboard. I mean, yeah, to put it together. And I was writing for a living as a business journalist at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But every night or every morning, I was sitting there at my little cobbled together personal computer, trying to learn how to be a novelist.
Yeah.
And I have a closet full of failed manuscripts to show for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what it takes.
Yeah, and I think you were right to call it a game, and I think that puts it in an interesting perspective, because I think that makes it challenging in a fun way. But I think underneath all of this, and I know this is true with you, and it sounds trite to say, but I don't think people quite appreciate the gravity of the words, is that you have to have this just unyielding passion for the work because of how hard it is. So do you feel like throughout your writing journey, there has just been, I can't wait to get to the page, even though it's hard, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if there's any message that I try to give people, it is don't be afraid of the fact that pretty much every first draft is a failure to begin with. I mean,
Right.
I know people who are just brilliant. We've been talking about some of them. There are these people out there whose work just shines. Barbara Nicholas just won the Carter Book Award for a very good reason, and I look at her work and I try to learn from it, and I'm guessing that she does plenty of rewriting. On the other hand, I'm also going to guess that her first drafts, probably shine a little bit more than mine. My first drafts, I've just gotten really comfortable with the idea that I'm just world building, I am story building, I am character building, and then I'm gonna get it out there. I'm gonna write, not think, which is the term that I've got on a little post-it note on my
I
mind
love
board.
it.
Write, don't think, just get the thing out. Okay. And then I know, having failed at what is a virtually unreadable first draft, now I've got something that I can make readable and that I can become proud of. But
Right.
but that is the hardest thing to learn
And the
is
labeling it as a failure is not even really accurate because that first draft is the hardest part of all of it. So I'm not saying the revisions are a walk in the park, but when you have that done, you've created this sense of tremendous momentum where
right.
now you can start to get excited about the actual sculpting, which is where all the magic happens. And you're right. But I think, as hard as that shitty first draft is, I'm just thinking about some of your earlier comments about the game comment. I think
Sure.
some people approach writing like, okay, let me figure out the formula, meaning let me read the books, let me see what's happening on social media, let me see where the market is. And that's all fine, but if you don't have that love for it, I think you're doomed to fail because yeah,
Absolutely.
why? It's like being in a 9 to 5 job, like a drudgery job. Why would you keep doing this? And
Right.
they told you, oh, by the way, you work here, but maybe in year 10 we'll pay you something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. You have to have fun with it. And I have had fun with it literally my entire life. I
Yeah.
have just loved putting, made up fictional words down on the page.
Yeah.
I have made a good living, putting good, strong journalistic, words on the page, writing for executives in the electric utility industry and doing what I needed to do to make a living as a professional writer. But the authorial side, I've done plenty of nonfiction too. Now, I did 5 nonfiction books before I went into the fiction. Fine with that as well. Enjoyed it. But the real joy, the real pleasure for me is the world building that you get to do with fiction. And I see it as a game. I see it as three-dimensional chess, is what I
Yeah.
see it.
Totally.
And there are layers, and there are layers upon layers. And every time you move one character or have him change or her change what they say, everything else changes. And it just fascinates me endlessly. And I keep waiting to get tired of it, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean that's great, and I think that same chess game applies to all facets of an author's career. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is aspiring writers is they continuously view it as a hobby because they haven't gotten an agent, they haven't gotten published, or they self-published and it didn't do what they wanted it to do, and they're not looking at it as a startup company where, yeah, I'm going to
Good.
invest in this for a long time, sweat equity, actual dollars,
There you go.
for
There you go.
years, and who knows when the return is going to come, but I believe in it and this is my passion. And
There
just
you go.
they don't see it like that, or some of them don't, and then they wonder why it doesn't go anywhere.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. People listening to this, I don't listen to that many podcasts, but I listen to how I built this, which is
Yeah.
to do with right. I mean, I listen to some of the writing podcasts as well. The shit no one tells you about writing, and some of those that are really important and really helpful. And I would recommend people listen to those. But how I built this is just listening to these people who do the startup companies. And Guy Raz, the old NPR guy, spends an hour and a half going through these people's lives. Every single one of them. That is the bottom. The same piece for every of them is that they work their butts off and they just keep at it. Then they don't give up. And that is the only way you're going to make it in the fiction writing world.
Totally, totally. Not giving up, but then also being vulnerable and open-minded to learn. And because, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't
Oh
work. But if but it's none of it's wasted.
yeah.
That's the other thing that drives me nuts is people look at rejection as failure rather than redirection of like, okay, this is one way that it didn't work. I think that's what Edison said, right? I found 1,000 ways that it didn't work.
Yeah.
That's what you keep doing. And all under that umbrella of joy and passion and love for the writing, but having an open mind, receiving, and seeking and receiving critical feedback, unbiased third-party feedback, not your mother, not
Yep.
not your
Yep. Yep.
spouse.
Yep. Oh, totally. You know, yeah, it's amazing to me how many I have coffee all the time with writers who want to talk to me about how do you get published? What do I do? And they're so protective of their work.
Yeah,
And the best thing I can tell them is let go of your work.
yeah,
Let other people hammer it to shred, you know, rip it apart, tell you what they don't like about it. The only time a critique works is if someone's being critical. I mean, that's
yeah,
why the word critique is in it. And
yeah.
share the work around, and then take that in. You're absolutely right. And it is amazing how many people who are just entering this game are so invested in themselves. And I think it's part of just you're right. It's that fear of failure. And
Yeah.
so they just, okay, if someone's telling me I'm doing it wrong, I'm failing. And instead you've got to completely switch that mindset. You absolutely have to.
Yeah, and your phrase letting go, I think also applies to the broader scope of you might have to let go of a book and because so with my writing coaching, I see books, I see manuscripts that I'm working on that you get a sense after a while of like this is promising, but I think to make it saleable, it would have to be such a gut thing. You'd have to gut the entire thing. But this person seems to have the chops that if they just started with a fresh idea, it might go somewhere. But
Mhm.
the idea of like you releasing, years worth of work into the ether is so overwhelmingly scary to people, where I see it as like that you needed that to get
Right.
to,
Right.
because I had multiple books that didn't sell. So I didn't have a choice, but like I had a choice whether to continue or not.
Right.
And I was just too excited to continue rather than being like, trying to cling to something to salvage something that, was just going to take the fun out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be comfortable with that idea. I'm curious, how much have you learned for your own writing from coaching and looking at others, from going into that, into this other realm? Does it help you with your writing a tremendous amount? It seems
Yeah.
like it.
That's a great question, and because I've only been doing it for about a year and a half, but it has definitely helped because I don't read a lot of fiction. I mostly read nonfiction, and so when unless I'm blurbing or judging a contest, so now I'm reading fiction and I'm seeing trends in writing that's not quite there yet, and it does inform me a lot because so here's a good example. I'm seeing a lot of backstory. I'm seeing a lot of overwritten thrillers where a lot of things are being explained, and it's really not only is it pulling the pacing down, but it's detaching us from the emotional connection to the main character. And it's obvious to me, but then I'll turn my manuscript into my editor. That'll be a really tight 84,000 words. And this just happened. She said, I think we can lose about 5,000 words. And I'm like, wow. And I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's totally right. It's even though it's tight, it's still overwritten because
Mhm.
I'm repeating some things.
Mhm.
So you never stop learning as long as you surround yourself with really strong voices and you read enough to see maybe what turns you off and how does that reflect in your own writing. Do you read a lot of other stuff where you're able to kind of glean insights?
I do. I have my core crew of people that I share manuscripts back and forth with, that I'm actively editing and actively offering critique to, and then they're offering critique back to me. I find that tremendously helpful. Looking at others' work in its formative stages and being asked to expose flaws, look for flaws.
Yeah,
It amazes me how helpful that is for me to then turn to my own work and go, oh, why didn't I see that? And then they point out, some very similar flaws in my work. And I'm looking at it going, why in the heck can't I see it in my own when I'm seeing it in these people's work?
totally.
And I have gotten better as a result of seeing it in others. I'm convinced I've gotten quite a bit better at recognizing it in my own work, and also almost heading it off before I do it, almost
Right.
before. It's like, because I've recognized, okay, I know that didn't work. I really go back and forth a lot with Margaret Mitsushima. If I don't know if you
Yeah.
have Margaret,
Yeah.
and
She's
she's
great.
wonderful
Yeah.
and she's very kind. But if you've read her work, she's also, it's like, how does this very kind person write what she writes?
Right.
Well, in the same way, she knows how to be critical, and so she's just wonderful. And so she shows me these things, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Margaret.
Right.
And every time she points something out to me, rather than fight it, I look at it and I'm like, oh, you're right. And that's who you want to find. I want to find these people who are better than me and get them to look at my work.
Yeah, and I think when we define what that right person is, it's not just that maybe they're a more successful writer. It's when they say something, you feel it. You resonate. It is almost just like, oh, of course. Because I've been when critique groups were like, you have 5 people and it's really just one person whose words really resonate with you. Other ones are like, I kind of disagree because you can't make everyone's changes, because it'll make a mess of a book. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about your series. So you're now what, book 9 on your
Book nine
national
came
park?
out last year. That was the one was the finalist for the Carter Book Award. Re-released book 1 this year as a 10th anniversary edition in concert with the 15th anniversary celebration of my small, wonderful environmental social justice publishing house called Torrey House Press in Salt Lake City. And I just handed in the rewritten final version of book 10, which will come out next June. And that is Great Sand Dunes Massacre. So it's a National Park Mystery Series. I don't know if we've gotten to that point, but I write the National Park Mystery Series. So I've got an amateur sleuth archaeologist who travels from national park to national park, drags his family along. It's a family-oriented mystery series, kind of aimed at tourists who are visiting the national parks, people who are interested in the national parks. The bodies pile up. It falls to my amateur sleuth and his family to solve during their travails in the park, that sort of thing.
I mean, and it's a great concept, because you can weave in not only your own experiences and for sure your love of national parks and the outdoors, but it's a very American style that showcases kind of the best of the country. You know.
We're looking for these days. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's tremendous. So, and I'm thinking about it because I'm reading right now a book called A Walk in the Park, which is,
wonderful. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, right? So, and
Yeah.
just for the listeners, it's about through hiking the Grand Canyon. And it's got me riveted, and you start to think about these locations that are very postcardy in your mind, but when you go visit them, they're otherworldly in a way. And to be able to kind of have that as a centerpiece for your series is tremendous. And you have a publisher that's their jam. That is their
precisely. And I've got whatever 4 million people going to the Grand Canyon every year.
Yeah.
4 million people going to Zion, going to Rocky Mountain, going to Yellowstone, going to Yosemite, all these places I'm writing about. So I've got this wonderful built-in audience who are people who are interested in these parks and they're readers. And so it's really been, that's been the key really to the success of the series.
And was it difficult? And I know you have nonfiction that you've published as well, but just getting with the publisher, like, did you have a lot of unpublished books before your series?
I come really close. So I had an agent with my nonfiction work in New York. She was wonderful. She passed away from cancer. I lost her. I kind of lost that contact in New York. And in the meantime, I was busy basically being an at-home dad for several years, raising my sons while my physician wife was out making the living for us. And so I kind of lost the thread. As my kids got older, I had the chance to really dive back into writing. Along about the time that I was still writing nonfiction, I won the National Outdoor Book Award for
I saw that, yeah,
nonfiction book. And so that kind of gave me the ability, kind of a platform upon which I knew I would be able to go to publishers in New York and find an agent again, because I've been successful on the nonfiction stage and probably, make something happen in New York. So I started down that path, but at the same time, I was just kind of looking everywhere, and I ran across these folks who were just getting going with Torrey House Press. And we really clicked. I had a meeting with them up in Salt Lake City, and we just liked each other. And I was like, I can go in with these folks. I get to do what I want to do, because I really wanted my books to be not polemics, but at least to have some messages within them that people could learn from.
Right.
And there's a little bit of educational, we call it value added,
Right. But it's not heavy handed.
Not heavy-handed. I mean, it may be 3 or 4 paragraphs in the whole darn book,
Yeah.
But there's some information that I'm trying to share with people that I hope people will find interesting, because I find it interesting.
Yeah.
water law type of things or whatever that really play a key part in how our national park system works, right? So I had the opportunity to do that and try that with these people. And they said, we'll do 3 books with you. We'll see. We'll see if we can make this work. And so they went in with me to 3 books.
But 3 books is a great commitment.
It was wonderful. Yeah. And it was all verbal. This is all just verbal. This is all friends, just in a coffee shop. But we just kept making it work. 4th book, we are just barely getting there. Almost didn't work. At that point, I was looking for an agent. I was taking the 4th book and massaging it as a nonfiction. This is a book set in Yosemite. And the underlying talk is about the genocide of Native Americans in California and why there aren't big Native American reservations in California like there are in other parts of the West. And so some hard topics, and yet in this light, fluffy way. I'm looking at that hard topic, looking at selling it as a nonfiction book back east. And then all of a sudden it finally took off. That 4th book took off, and the series has just been going great guns ever since. I'm happy with Torrey House Press. They're growing like crazy. They've now got some of the top nonfiction environmental authors in America that have thrown in Pam Houston, Craig Childs, David Gessner. These New York Times best-selling authors are now publishing, regularly with Torrey House Press. And so I've kind of become part of that juggernaut in a really fun way. But it was a risk because I knew I could have gone to New York and probably made that work. And yet this just has become the most joyous experience of my life to work with these people and get to write.
Wow. What do you think it was about that 4th book?
I think it was that whole thing that people talk about. It takes a while for a series to gain momentum.
Yeah.
And also I learned a lot. I go back and read.
Yeah, you got better, I'm sure.
I got better. I worked at it every day. And again, back to what we were talking about. I treated it as a job. I would work 8 to 12 every day, 5 days a week. And it was my, as you said, it's my jam. It was what I did. And I do feel like my books have gotten better and better over time. I'm still proud of the 10th anniversary edition book came out, and I was ready to kind of go, but I'm proud of it. It's solid. And yet I can see where the Yosemite book, which was the 4th book, we did the 4 big parks, the first 4 books, just to try to find as big an audience as we could. So we did Grand Canyon, Rocky Mountain, Yellowstone, and then Yosemite.
Yeah.
By the time we hit Yosemite, I knew what I was doing. I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I was killing people right and left. I knew how to kill people in ways that were kind of fun and exciting, and yet not overly grotesque. There's a whole game with the murder mystery, and I knew how to use that template to my benefit, I felt like.
Yeah.
And so Yosemite is the one I'm really proud of, because that's the one I feel like I really, kind of understood what is a game. Mysteries are games, thrillers are games, but mysteries in particular, you're playing this game with your readers.
Yeah.
You're presenting them with suspects. We're all playing that game together, trying to figure out who done it. And so that whole game thing, I kind of started getting a sense of in that Yosemite book.
Yeah. I mean, everything's a balance, and I think it becomes really difficult. Kind of like what you write, you're creating this balance between, an amateur sleuth, interesting subjects, dead bodies, beautiful and intricate landscapes. You're balancing all of that with the reality of murder. And you're not trying to dismiss it as, okay, I'm just making this into a game and we don't care about the victim. Exactly. But you're also not trying to make it super dark and heavy. Exactly. And that's got to be a skill that you must continuously be honing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll be honest. I mean, being married to an emergency room physician helps in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
Because in a way of just like being comfortable with the notion that we're all alive, but we're also all going to be dead.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to really think about that, but that is the reality. It's if anyone's seen The Pit yet, the new series is set.
Yeah.
That's, death is an overriding theme in there, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's still, all the people working in there are still living, and they are still, getting, having both problems with each other, but also joking and having a great time with each other. And it's in the midst of death, right? And that is the cauldron that is an emergency room. And honestly, that is the similar cauldron that is a murder mystery, that if it was all just death and blood, no one would want to read them. Right. So it is those wonderful characters that are trying to figure this out in this whole world where the ultimate catastrophe is occurring on a fairly regular basis,
Yeah.
That's what makes it, to me, fun to read. I never get tired of reading mysteries, and absolutely fun to write.
Yeah, and it's such a cultural attitude as well, I think, because you look at like Scandinavian fiction, thriller or mystery fiction, and it's bleak, man. And I think and it's beautiful. A lot of times it's like riveting and beautiful, but I think what I've evidenced myself just from reading is, you get to something like, or even British fiction is
Right,
exceptionally dark.
right,
And I think
right,
the difference is what I see more kind of in maybe North American fiction is there's maybe a little bit more hope attached, sometimes too much hope attached in an unrealistic way.
right.
And like Scandinavian fiction is like, yeah, this is bleak. And if you're looking for any kind of hope at the end, well, this is life.
Too bad.
And
Too bad.
and I respect both styles immensely, but it does have a profound impact on your mood.
It really does. I mean, I keep thinking, oh my God, I should be able to read Joe Nesbo. And then I go try to read, and I just can't even get through the first,
Yeah,
bloody chapter.
yeah.
I'm just, oh, and then it's gray and dark. And I'm like, I live in Southwest Colorado. It's sunny every day. I walk out the back door of my house. I go hiking. I'm like, I don't need that. I'm too fortunate. And so I'm trying to share with people kind of that whole other side. And you're right. Mine are a little too hopeful.
Well,
But
not
they
too
are,
hopeful, but everyone's got an audience. Everyone, like you think about. I was just in a session at BoucherCon where they were talking about romance readers and how romance readers want very specific tropes, and even though they're recognized as these tropes, that is the main reason that And then as authors, all we do is we hedge against like, this sounds like it's been done before. I want to do something. And you go way outside of the box, and you get feedback of like, ugh. I want boy meets girl.
yeah, oh yeah, totally. No, no, no. At one point in one of my books, I won't say which, because it doesn't sell as well as a result. No, but I let the villain get away. It was just I was playing that game, and
Yeah,
people were like, "You should not," I want closure, and honestly, I don't blame them. I mean, that was like, yeah,
yeah,
I wanted to try outside the box type of stuff. I have the opportunity with the publisher I'm with to try what I want to try, which is really great. They're just open to this and open to that, and yet that one didn't work.
yeah. I know, but I think the important part there is that you tried something different and you collected the data
Right,
of
exactly.
of what happened, and I think that's important as well. And it's funny. I even have like books like where my agent will be like, I feel like this left me sad because this woman is clearly deranged or whatever. And then I look at it, I'm like, yeah, but her derangement gives her hope. Like to me, like, so you can have totally different perspectives just because everyone's got their own little trigger. And at the end of the day, I think you just have to be true to what your gut says based on all those years and years of learning and feedback.
Absolutely. No,
So,
yeah, that's exactly
um,
right.
well, Scott, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we've got our own little storytelling to do now that we've talked about storytelling so much.
Good.
This
That's
is,
great. I watched Lori Roy do this last week, and she nailed it. So anyone wants to see how to do this right, go watch Lori Roy. This is
well, it's hard to do it right. I get nervous every time.
She was great. She was just brilliant. And you took her there, with the guy drinking. I don't know if
Oh,
you
right. Yeah. No,
getting sucked back into drinking again by the femme fatale. I mean, it was just watching the two of you, and it was great. So people want to see how they do this right. Go back and watch that one.
all right, we got three books to choose from. So they're all, I just reached over and grabbed them. So one is actually a book, but it's also a literary puzzle. It's Cain's Jawbone.
Right?
And I'm not having any memory about why I have this. Matt Goldman's The Murder Show
Right?
and Martin Edwards' The House on Graveyard Lane. So choose one of those.
Well, we're talking murder mystery. We got to do the murder show.
Yeah, Matt's a great guy. I saw him last week at BoucherCon. Were you there? Did you go
I
to?
didn't get there this year.
Got it.
I've been Left Coast Crime is my happy place. I try
I
to get
got to
about
go there. I haven't done that before. I need to get,
it,
where
it
is it
is
next year? Do you know?
it's San Francisco.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. February, March,
Um,
San Francisco. Yeah.
all right, give me a page between 1 and 292.
All right, let's go 74.
Okay, I'm going to quickly scan page 74. And see if there's something that stands out to me. All right, I am. Okay, you do whatever you want with this. This is perfect. Our character's name is Ethan. When Ethan steps into the alley, he finds over a dozen police officers gathered around the body.
He steps back quickly. Has anyone seen him? He suspects not. He pokes his head back around the corner. There's something about that body.
Ethan creeps closer to the body, his stigma being that he was never one for the sight of blood. He swallows hard, pushes the bile back down, and crouches. It was then he realized it wasn't how the body was configured that caught him off guard. It's how it smelled.
The smell rose into his nose. It set him back on his feet. He looked up. The officers around him had handkerchiefs to their mouths. He knew why.
But there was no gore visible aside from the slight incision on the side of his neck that resulted in the pool of blood. But that wasn't what he was smelling. He put on his gloves and opened the left side of the body's coat. And that's when he saw the source. We can call it there.
You can probably call it there. I was getting the source. I was having the source coming from his mouth and his breath, and you're going to something in his pocket. So I'm that's great.
I somehow just pictured his inner coat pockets being stuffed with wet dog food.
Oh,
and I don't know why that would be.
Right. We don't have to. That's great.
Right.
That's
right.
great.
Right.
Yeah, I was going Joe Nesbo and like some putrefaction murder method coming out of his mouth.
But right. Yeah, or Silence of the Lambs, and he pulls out the moth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, so Scott, congratulations on the 10th anniversary. I just kind of want to underscore, especially to listeners, like having a series not only go 9 books in 10 years, and then, a re-release of a special edition of the first book is just exceptionally rare. And obviously, and you've said a lot of great words about your publisher, but the reality of it is they love your work. You sell well for them, and that's, publishers who don't like you or you're not selling well for, as great as they are, they will drop you. So it's it's a testament to you.
Well, thank you very much. And a shout out to Ann Hillerman, who did the foreword for the book.
That's amazing.
For the 10th anniversary edition, she's been a wonderful fan of my work and a wonderful person talking about it. Just all these good people out there. CJ Box, shout out to you for what you pulled off in Denver with CJ Box. And what'd you have, 1,000 people there for that?
1,400. Yeah, that was amazing. A lot of people wanted to see CJ Box.
Yeah, the coolest thing. I mean, the stuff you're doing, I would just encourage people right back at you. I would encourage people to look at what you're doing, study what you've done, because that's how you do it. I mean, it really is.
Oh, well, thank you.
Step by step. It is hard work, but as long as you're having a good time doing it, and you're clearly having a good time doing it, as I feel like. Yeah. That's what it is.
It has to start with that.
Right.
All right, buddy. I would love to see you in person sometime. If you're ever up in the Denver area, give me a shout out. And otherwise, I'm sure we'll connect somewhere.
I'll look forward to it.
All right, brother. Take
Thanks,
care.
Sir.
So that is it. That is my conversation with author Scott Graham. As a reminder, his 10th anniversary edition of the first of his National Park series, Grand Canyon Sacrifice, with the foreword by Ann Hillerman, is available, and it is stunning. So you should check out not only that, but the entirety of his series, which he obviously described in great detail in this episode. And if you want to see all of his series and learn more about him, you can just go to his website, which is scottfranklинgraham.com. You can pop over to carterwilson.com if you're interested in stuff related to me. And if you're interested in any kind of writing coaching, public speaking coaching, online classes, or retreats, please feel free to visit my company at unboundwriter.com. All right, friends, that is it for this episode. It was a good one. More episodes will be out next week. Thank you, as always, for your time and attention to listening to this today. Take care.